So, victim characteristics. In the same way you can't identify an abuser by physical traits, you can't identify a victim either. But it will be helpful to know what to look for, maybe what not to look for. You're going to look for an absence of spunk. Specifically, like a change over time. Maybe they used to be a really outgoing, fun-loving, easygoing type of person, and now they're just sullen or quiet, withdrawn, and you're not seeing that. You may look for an absence of dependability. One woman I visited with said, I used to try to help out with like the drama productions and science clubs and all these things, but my husband would either create so much chaos in our home right before the event where he knew I was supposed to be there, but he would create this chaos and I would always be late, or he would make it impossible for me to get things that I needed to buy that I said I would provide. Or we would miss it all together because I was absolutely in a puddle and I just couldn't stop crying. Or something, there was always a reason. And she said, I just decided it wasn't even worth trying. So I stopped helping with all of those things. It just wasn't worth it. You may find that there's an absence of presence. So they're less active. They're limited in their availability. This would be that isolation. This is what it looks like when you're the person on the outside. So maybe they get repeated calls. One woman took her children to the mall for an afternoon, and while she was there, her husband texted or called 47 times. I will tell them, you need to document that, and so this will come up over and over. When those things happen, document that. However you do it, do screenshots, write it down. We're not talking totally, evidence in the law of the land, but simply to have a record. But that's why she's going to be less active. She may be less available. She may have to have her phone with her at all times or be able to be reached no matter what. And she may not see reality. There may be an absence of seeing things for what they really, truly are. And as you begin to pick up on that she's saying things, but they're always couched in this really weird way that doesn't necessarily reflect the way you would think or say it. You might think it's you, but start paying attention, start listening, start asking questions to see what's happening. It may always be couched in, I'm sorry, a lot of apologies, a lot of passive words and word choices, and softening all the edges on everything to leave room for, so she's not going to speak in absolutes, she's going to make everything sound like it could go 5 different ways, because that's how she protects herself. You're going to look for a presence of, oh my word, I had these lovely PowerPoints and look at what they did. So I apologize. You're going to get to be a little ADHD or practice something a little different today. So look for the presence of confusion and fear. Those are the top 2 characteristics. If a woman tells me she's confused, my antenna go up and all of a sudden I have questions. If she is afraid, even if she doesn't say she's afraid, but I can hear fear in how she says things or what's happening. James 3:16 says, "For where there is envy and selfish ambition, there is disorder and every evil thing." If there's chaos, if there's confusion, somebody's in it for themselves, and that's a problem. You're also going to be looking for a presence of anxiety, worry, heightened stress, physical malaise, that's what I call it. Just she doesn't feel good, ever. She's ill, she picks up everything. She has a lack of sleep, lack of appetite, losing weight, maybe has autoimmune diseases. You may see if there's physical abuse, there are going to be physical infirmities, if there's physical or even sexual abuse. So stiff movements, they may have a limp or a slow gait, they may have difficulty sitting or standing, that maybe that they're not able to get medical care. It's very common for abusers to refuse medical care because they've abused somebody, right? They're guilty, but they don't want anyone to know. So I have known women to go for days with a broken arm or concussion, any number of things. The children, if a dad pulls a kid by the arm too hard in his anger and there's dislocation of a shoulder or other kinds of things, then that's not being cared for and not being seen by a physician. So just, again, you're being observant. You're not interfering. You're just taking note. Excuses for behavior, excuses for her behavior, for being late, for not getting things done, for not having it all together, for the children's misbehavior, or all of these things, or excuses for her husband's behavior, or why he's not here, or why he doesn't do this anymore, now he's not coming to church, or why you have all the beer cans in the garage. It's not that all of those are wrong things. You're looking for patterns, and you're looking for excuses. Self-blame. If she's blaming herself for marriage issues, for struggles in the marriage, everything is always her fault. That's going to be perhaps an evidence that she's a victim of abuse. Indecision, like she questions her thoughts. She can't make decisions. She's extremely indecisive. Okay, there are indecisive people. I get that. But I also know that indecision is often a result of childhood abuse or abuse as an adult, because making a decision comes with punishment. Making a decision comes with consequences, unless it's the right decision, so better to make no decision whatsoever. There may be signs of trauma. So an immediate reaction is shock and denial. Your first responders, and we'll talk about this in lesson 12, first responders understand and have been trained in shock. And so shock is like just numbness of affect, like emotionally not responding. And denial, like we talked about in our last lesson, like not even connecting the dots that just happened. That's normal. That's how you know something just happened. That's how you know there's a problem, is because somebody's pretending there's not a problem. It's called shock. It's the way God protects us in that moment. Initial reactions may be exhaustion, confusion, sadness, anxiety, agitation. Okay, note, when there's been an altercation and someone shows up that is safe, the victim may fly off the handle. So this is really common. If there's been an assault, if law enforcement is called in and they come, the abuser is going to be very calm, cool, collected. Remember our Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing? Okay. She is going to be, and this is what the officers call it, I'm just telling you, she's batshit crazy. She is ranting, she is crying, she is screaming, she's on the ground, she's clinging to them, she is all over the place. If you are a pastor or you do marriage counseling, you may have seen this in your office. Please, please pay attention. The abusive individual, the one who maintains control, is going to be calm. And when that victim is in a place where there is finally someone who listens to her, someone who is safe, someone who might see what's going on, someone who might be able to intervene and help her, she is going to tell you everything. And she's going to want your help, and she's going to beg or plead or cry. It doesn't happen every time, but when it happens, be aware that that is normal. She is in a place where she's heard and seen, and someone may be able to help her. And she's communicating, and her body has just let loose. And there is all this adrenaline, and there's all this stuff going on physiologically for her, as well as emotionally, when she's in a safe place, that she can't express when she's not safe. So be aware that is normal. I'm reading like off of, an actual site that lists reactions of trauma responses. There may be confusion. There may be just blunted affect, again, the shock. Long-term reactions would be unpredictable emotions, flashbacks where things come back to her mind at a time she didn't expect them. Maybe just sight, sound, pieces of things. Strained relationships, headaches, nausea, again, autoimmune disorders, sore throats. Realize that this situation, this life is her normal. She is a normal person, but she is in a very abnormal situation. Treat her like she's normal. Expect normal. So when you're seeing something that's not normal, realize it's not her that's the problem. There's something else that's the problem. All right, for children. The abuse of children follows many of these same dynamics and characteristics. And so because this is a biblical victim care course, although much of what we've been talking about has to do with a marriage relationship, there are also children, and I think it's important to pause at this time and just talk through what this looks like. This is going to take a little while, but please bear with me because I'm going to go rapidly through some resources and helps for you. But let's see first what the Bible has to say.
Matthew chapter 18, verses 2 through 10, and 19, verses 13 through 15. And he, Jesus, called a small child and had him stand among them. Truly I tell you, he said, unless you turn and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever humbles himself like this child, this one is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever welcomes one child like this in my name, welcomes me. But whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to fall away, it would be better for him if a heavy millstone were hung around his neck and he were drowned in the depths of the sea. Woe to the world because of offenses. For offenses will inevitably come, but woe to that person by whom the offense comes. If your hand or your foot causes you to fall away, cut it off and throw it out. It is better for you to enter life maimed or lame than to have 2 hands or 2 feet and be thrown into the eternal fire. And if your eye causes you to fall away, gouge it out and throw it away. For it is better for you to enter life with 1 eye than to have 2 eyes and be thrown into hellfire. See to it that you do not despise one of these little ones, because I tell you that in heaven their angels continually view the face of my Father in heaven. Matthew 19:13 through 15. Then little children were brought to Jesus for him to place his hands on them and pray, but the disciples rebuked them. Jesus said, "Leave the little children alone, and do not try to keep them from coming to me, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." And after placing his hands on them, he went on from there.
So let me point out just a couple of things in these scriptures that I think are interesting. We understand what Jesus means, or I'm assuming we understand what it means to come as children, to be humble, to be dependent, to be needy as we come to him. And then he goes into talking about people who cause these little ones who believe in me to fall away. And it's interesting that he doesn't say it's as if it would be better, or these are not figures of speech Jesus is presenting. This is reality. It would be better for you if a millstone were hung around your neck. It would be better for you to lose a limb. It would be better for you to pluck out your eye. Not, it might be better, it would be like this. No, it really actually would be better for you. And that shares with us the reality of how God sees sin against children, against little ones. Then we have this idea, which I don't even know how to picture this, but I know it is a comfort to many adults who look back on their childhood. And we talk through this verse where in chapter 18, Matthew 18, verse 10, where he says, I tell you that in heaven, their angels continually view the face of my Father. What does that mean? The best interpretation, the most sense I can make of this verse, which has, in my hearing in church, never been talked about, ever, so I've done my own study to try. What it means is there is a witness. That child is not on their own. Someone is seeing this happen, and someone is testifying to God the Father in heaven what is happening to this child when no one else sees and no one else knows. And the other reason I believe that's true is because we have the account of Tamar and her brother Amnon who sinned against her. And it says that everyone was sent from the room. The only two people in that room were Amnon and Tamar. And yet it's written in Scripture. So how did it get in God's word if no one was there? Amnon's not writing it. I'm pretty sure Amnon's not writing it. I'm not even sure David wanted to, because it says David was angry and did nothing. But God sees, and he bears witness to what is unseen. And it's important that we understand that and that we know that there is a witness. Child abuse is more common than you or I realize, but I'd like to give you a couple statistics. At least 1 in 7 children have experienced abuse or neglect in the past year. We're not talking lifetime, we're talking this year. But that's likely an underestimate. You are more likely to be abused by someone in your church than your congregation being involved in a shooting. There's a site called notourchurches.com. That should be in your notes. These next two are particularly difficult to believe, but it's important that we understand and know this. There's an Abel and Harlow study that reveals that 93% of sex offenders describe themselves as religious. 93% of sex offenders. They're religious, and they may be the most dangerous. And Dr. Anna Salter revealed that sexual offenders admit to perpetrating. So she's talking to the offenders, not the victims. The offenders have admitted to perpetrating between 10 and 1,250 victims per person, per perpetrator. You start at the low end of 10 children, and you're going up to 1,250 victims per perpetrator. Every offender interviewed was reported by children, and the reports were ignored. We want to take it seriously. So if a child has concerns or reports abuse, we want to listen. We don't want to blow it out of proportion. We keep it as small as possible for as long as possible. That's Matthew 18. So I want to give you some resources. There is an online site of Mothers of Sexually Abused Children, MOSAC, Mosac. What I will often do is I go to the website, and then there's a place that says child sexual abuse. I follow to warning signs, and then they have 3 different pages. 1 page for behavioral symptoms, 1 page for emotional symptoms, 1 page for physical symptoms. And so I may use that to walk through, even with adults. Did you experience this? Did you experience this? Now, some of them are really explicit, so you want to be careful what you say, who you say it to, how you use that information. But there are everything that's listed there is abnormal. That's not the way children normally respond to to the world, or it's not the way their bodies generally work. So if they're ticking those off, then you have reason to believe that there has been sexual abuse, and that's a helpful tool. What else was I going to tell you? I was going to tell you something else about that. If I think of it, I will. But it's just helpful to walk through that. Oh, the other thing I will say is when I'm talking to adults, if they share a specific symptom and yes, that's me, I say, when did that start? How old were you when that first happened? Did that end? When did that end? Did it come up again? Because we may be seeing multiple events or multiple perpetrators. And so whether they remember events or not, if I'm starting to see those things, I'm aware of what they are, and we can start to have those conversations. Again, we leave it up to God to reveal those things in His timing, but we can also be agents of healing and grace. Look for and ask about differentials. So this is mentioned in Mending the Soul workbook. When you're talking about sexual abuse, one of these three things is part of it if it's abusive. One is a power differential. So there's some dynamic, whether it's someone who has a position of authority or someone who has more power physically, or someone who has more knowledge, is more powerful in knowledge. So if you're looking at a sexual encounter, and this will often happen even with teenagers or college students, and they're not sure, they think it was mutual or they think they gave consent, start asking about these three things. Was there a power differential between you and the other individual? If yes, it's inappropriate, it's abuse. I know it's a big word, but it's a power differential. If there's an experience differential, so you have one individual who has a lot more experience and knowledge of what is going on and how this works, that's a concern, and I want to ask more questions about that. And the third is a gratification differential. If one person is doing this to reward themselves at the expense of the other person, then I'm going to say that's inappropriate, and I'm going to start looking for abuse dynamics. So if any of those three things have happened in a sexual encounter, then we want to ask more questions, and that's especially true for children. Here are some resources. So there's a book, Caring for the Vulnerable Child. This is a whole set. There is a teacher's guide. There is a journal for children, and there is a parent workbook. So those are available. I have used pieces and parts of the different journals to work with children and parents to help them. Those are Celestia Tracy is the same person who wrote Mending the Soul. There is also a student of Mending the Soul. It looks like just a textbook, so it's the text and the workbook all together. I do want you to be aware, if you recommend this or use this with teens, that there is some explicit information here as it relates to sexual abuse. So be aware of that as you're working through that with them. And then also for children, the book Building Bridges by Julie Lowe. It's a workbook. She's a biblical counselor, and so she gives you different tools, worksheets, examples to draw out children and what has happened, what their experience is, and how they're responding to abuse. That's very helpful, or even just life. And there are just a lot of really helpful materials out there. How Much is a Little Girl Worth? By Rachel Denhollander. You may recognize her name. She has a book also for boys, How Much is a Little Boy Worth? We want to educate our kids and give them words so that they can actually tell someone what's happening. God Made All of Me. This is called The Talk by Luke Gilkerson. It comes in a series. It's 7 lessons to introduce your child to biblical sexuality. If You Ever Meet a Grown-Up Bully by my friend David Lee. So there are a lot of resources that you as a parent can use, or that you can use to help parents with their children, or you can use with children. And I will put another document in the Populi uploads with information. I'm requesting permission from Jocelyn Wallace, Bev Moore, and then just some added information for helping children. If you are helping a woman who has been sexually abused or was as a child or a teen, sorry, I'm going to set that down, here are some resources for her. On the Threshold of Hope, the book and workbook by Dr. Diane Langberg, really helpful, biblical, will help her walk through what happened. Again, talking through truth and bringing about healing. Mending the Soul, the book and workbook, which you have. This is a secular resource, but this has been one of the most helpful for me as far as just gathering facts and material about how perpetrators work and what the process is to walk through healing with a survivor. It's called Surviving Childhood Sexual Abuse. And these are all listed in your notes, but I just want you to see what they look like. And In the Aftermath, this is by Bev Moore. So Bev is one of the people that I referred to a minute ago. Past the Pain of Childhood Sexual Abuse by Pam Gannon and Beverly Moore. They are biblical counselors. The Wounded Heart by Dan Allender. It's a little dated, but it has some really good helpful material, especially for sexual abuse that was not perpetrated physically. If you're talking about emotional incest or enmeshment, some of those other verbal or visual sexual assault or interactions with children that was really inappropriate, he gives some good insight to that. So we're going to just keep moving through, but I want you to be aware and have resources, because you will no doubt, if you are someone who is loving, kind, willing to listen, enter into suffering, you will encounter it in all different people in all different ways. So those are some added resources. Next, we're going to get them to safety.